ho, ho, hoy there, matey. What's going on? Welcome to the Bitchuation Room podcast live stream. I am your host, Francesca Fiorentini. Aren't you glad you pressed play on this? I really can't say press play. It's very difficult. Is that a speech impediment? The L's and R's? I guess so. Yeah. It is. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining us. We have such a good show today. And by today, I mean a few days ago, because this is in fact a pre-record. I'm so sorry. But to make it up to everybody, we have Congressman Jamaal Bowman in the house. Oh my God. Newest member of the squad representing New York 16th District. He is joining me to talk about all things in the House, the Progressive Caucus, what's going on with the Build Back Better Act. I asked him about the U.S. military budget and some of the inroads that progressives are making to reining all that in. Even got in a little question around his vote for the Iron Dome. We talked a bit about that. It was good. It was really, really good. So stay tuned for that. I don't know why I'm talking. It's in the future. It's coming up. It's happening. Also, comedian Sammy Obeid is here. It is going to be so good. We're going to talk about, among other things, Squid Game, obviously, because everyone's talking about Squid Game, so we have to talk about Squid Game. Also, our very own Squid Game in the United States, which is the vaccine hesitancy and misinformation. We're going to be talking about what else have I got planned? We're going to be talking about, Facebook. Huge whistleblower story. Is it going to be the end of them? Probably not, but I want to talk about it. So make sure to like the stream right now, like and share if you are on Twitch. Thanks so much for being here. I hope you follow and subscribe right now. And thank you so much, everyone who has supported. Also, we're doing a bonus story. I don't know if you guys heard, but the FBI raided the NYPD. Oh my God. So we're going to be talking about that for patrons only. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. That's where you sign up for $5, for $10 a month, which gets you a shout out, for $20 a month, which after 3 months gets you a piece of merch, for $50 a month, which after 3 months gets you 2 pieces of merch. My God, the rewards are endless. No, including you can give $2 a month, but get access to that bonus discussion and every bonus discussion that we have, all the bonus bishes. So make sure to get that. And also, we have merch on this show. So just for becoming a patron, you get 20% off automatically. But if you just want your swag, bitchuationroom.com is where you can get it. That's okay. You don't have to become a patron yet. But again, this show is sponsored by you. It's not sponsored by like a meal kit service that like you would like that pairs food with different strains of weed. I wish that were a thing, and like bring like a DVD with it, like DVD, a kind of strain of weed, and like your munchie snack. First of all, I've just invented the best meal kit ever. But no, this is sponsored by you guys. So when you become a patron, you really are helping out alternative media, helping me out, helping the whole team out, and making sure that we can do things like this and interview people like Congressman Bowman. But let's get into it. Still, please comment. Keep them coming. You might even see a comment from a woman named Francesca Fiorentini. She's real. That might be me in the future, who I can't vouch for. Like, I can vouch for her now, but I can't vouch for what she's going to say. If you're listening as a podcast, y'all, please give me 5 stars. Give this podcast 5 stars on Apple, on iTunes. That means a world of love to me. And with that, y'all, let's get into the very first segment, as we always do, asking everyone, what is wrong right now? What is wrong? What are you bitching about? This is, what are you bitching about? So I recently went to New York for like, I don't know, less than 48 hours. It was great. If I didn't hit you up, my bad. If I didn't do a show, my bad. I'll be back. So part of what I'm bitching about is like the crazy gentrification of New York, which is like old news. But really, I've said this before, but New York does gentrification with like no lube, man. They're just like, boof, Whole Foods, like, boof, Target. It's like, do you want to light some candles and shit before you're going to completely like ruin a whole neighborhood? But I was in Williamsburg, and damn, like Williamsburg's where you can really see, it's basically like the Times Square of Brooklyn. You can really see everything, the waterfront, the like glass buildings, the luxury condos. It's lovely now because there's like, places to eat outside, and it's designed for like, Italian tourists and stuff, but it's all just this hellscape of Bloomberg's imagination and the real estate industry that has huge stranglehold on New York. And I know rent is out of control. It's always been out of control. Now it's even worse. That is not what I'm bitching about. That is part of what that's number one. Number two, I went for the first time recently to make a return. Okay, I bought something on Amazon, guys. Don't be mad. I bought one thing on Amazon. I needed like a battery pack charger, right? I mean, what was my option? Going to Best Buy? Like, I know I need to support the little guy, but like Best Buy was not my option. But the point is, I bought on Amazon, and I had to return it because it wasn't the right thing. So I go to one of these Amazon stores. I don't know if you guys have ever been inside an Amazon store. It is the saddest, most bizarre Black Mirror shit I think I've ever experienced, because Amazon, as we all remember, ostensibly was promising the world and the country specifically a life of online shopping, one-click shopping, 2-day Prime delivery. Don't even have to leave your home. Don't have to go rifle through the books at a bookstore. No, we're just going to send it right to your house, and shipping is free, etc. And slowly but surely, bookstores and a bunch of places, hardware stores, mom and pop shops started going out of business because everything was more accessible on Amazon. And then they did a bait and switch and just started setting up stores. And I know this is a little bit old news. I just haven't been inside one. And you go in and it's like, well, here's a computer charger. Here's a loofah. Like, here, Christmas socks. It's just the most like random, like, imagine like seeing the algorithm in real time, like physically, like what are people shopping for and seeing. And it was so awful. It's just like I feel like Amazon shops, which are called like 4-star stores, which seems weird because I thought you can give 5 stars. Is it only 4 stars? I don't rate shit because I'm not a snitch, but it's like the hand that rocks the cradle, but on capitalism, where it's like first I'm going to terrorize your family and rip you all apart and then kill your wife, and then I'm going to wear her nightie and nurse your child. Like, it's super psychopath shit to like slowly tear something down only to move into its place. And that's really what capitalism is what I'm trying to say. That multinational conglomerate sort of out of control, non-competitive capitalism is in effect just the hand that rocks the cradle. It's mafia shit. It's worse than mafia shit. It's legalized mafia shit. You get what I'm saying. Anyway, that's what I'm bitching about. Tell me what you guys are bitching about in the comments, and the future Francesca will respond. And with that, let me bring in my guest for the hour. You've seen him all over the place, I hope. Maybe you've caught his show live. He's such a delight. He's so funny. And you've also seen him on 100 Humans on Netflix. Please welcome Sammy Obeid.
Hey there.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for doing the show, Sammy.
It's funny because you were talking about Best Buy. I'm in my mom's study right now, and she's at Best Buy. That's why I'm here. So
Wait, you sent her out to Best Buy? Because you're like, Ma, I need to study.
Ma, I gotta do a podcast. You go to Best Buy, get yourself something.
Get yourself something nice.
Yeah.
Get yourself a battery charger.
She was on her way out. She's like, I'm going to Best Buy. I made an appointment. I'm like, you made an appointment to go to Best Buy?
It's the most mom shit ever.
Yeah, it's like the biggest thing she's doing all week. I didn't ask what for, but I hope it's a good appointment. So
if she's anything like my mom, she's sitting there talking to like the genius squad, being like, "Okay, but how do you make a playlist?" You know, and they're like, "Oh my god, I wish this woman had a son who loved her enough to explain these things."
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't help her out at all. That's why she went to Best Buy. It's probably something I could have helped her with. So,
Sammy, we started the show off asking what you're bitching about. So, what are you bitching about today?
yeah, well, it's kind of been I've been like at war for like 2 years. It's a war on noise. Um, I'm just having issues with. So I have misophonia. You heard of misophonia?
No, I actually don't. I probably have some like I'm like partially deaf. I don't know what it means.
You may have it. A lot of people have it. It's basically where you get annoyed at other people for making noises.
Ah,
Um, it's like fear or annoyance of noise, basically.
so it's like when someone's jaw clicks and stuff, or like
Yes, someone
so it's
eats an
the
apple. You
so
know,
it's the opposite of ASMR. Like you hate ASMR or you kind of like ASMR.
sure, yeah. I like ASMR. I've never heard any ASMR that I don't like, so maybe it is ASMR. Probably is a cure of some sort, but but it definitely, people have like you got to have a noise that ticks you off, right?
I mean, I don't know if it's the same one, but I hate leaf blowers forever.
Okay, boom.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
there we go. I mean, that's number 2 on my list right now. Um, and I mean, so I think in LA they're doing something to get rid of like gas powered leaf blowers. Did you hear about that
Ooh,
initiative?
they're just gonna
Yeah.
use water.
Yeah. Yeah, the rake. It's the arm powered leaf
Uh-huh.
blower. Yeah, no, there's electric leaf blowers, which apparently are not as loud, but still probably too loud for me.
I've heard them. I like yeah, my old landlord was like I was like, do you guys clean up around here? And she was like, you can get a leaf blower. I'm like, bitch, I'm not buying a fucking leaf blower. She's like, they've got these handheld electric ones. She was a total terrible landlord. But yeah, what's number 1 on your list?
Loud cars. And that includes motorcycles, loud cars and motorcycles. These need to be stopped. I am not a gun guy. I'm not a gun proponent. I don't want to touch a gun. I don't want to see a gun. Second Amendment, fine, but like no guns around me. I think about buying guns every time one of these cars passes my house at 2 a.m. I swear to God, I'm just like, I would be out there just shooting off their tires because
Yes.
these people, like, if only they knew how much they're damaging society, right? And granted, it's my problem for living on a somewhat of a busy street. I mean, I am close enough to the street, but far enough so I can hear a loud car when it passes. And if I'm drifting to bed at 11 a.m., 11 p.m., 11 a.m., long night.
Ew. I don't think cars are your first problem, but
right.
yeah.
After all the booze and now this. But yeah, like at 11 p.m., if reasonable people trying to go to bed at a reasonable hour so they can go to their reasonable jobs on the next reasonable day. And then these people passing by and can just wake you up. And the thing is, this happened to me so many times because I live on a noisy street that it happens now and it ticks me off so much that I just don't go back to sleep because I'm so mad.
Oh my God. I'm like I feel very kin to you because I live on a busy street as well. And look, I wish every small business, much success. I'm glad you survived the pandemic, except for one. And that is the motorcycle shop
Yes.
around the corner from my place that I swear to God is very much tells its customers, oh, please gun it down this road.
Right.
And that is my street. And they do all the time. And I yell out my window, kill yourself, but that's mostly for me. And they're riding a motorcycle, so eventually, they probably will. Anyway.
Yeah, and it's true. And like I have friends who ride motorcycles, and I'm like, I don't hate them. They're good people, but they love these loud vehicles, And because when you say motorcycle, you're targeting at these very specific people. But there's also just a lot of people out there with spoilers and those pop noises on their cars. I don't even know what that is. And these people need to be stopped as well. Yeah, why?
Yeah. Oh my God. Some
It's
people should click on the dick enlargement ads.
Absolutely. It's for sure sexual inadequacy in every way. So I'm trying to take the more Buddhist approach now. I hear the car pass by, and I'm just like, I hope he performs well next time.
That is a great thing to bitchuate on. All right, well, we got to get into the week. So much happened this week. Okay, so this was a week where a German ship's anchor appears to have disrupted an oil pipeline off the coast of Southern California, causing 144,000 gallons of oil to spill into the ocean, just months after millions of gallons of sewage also spilled off the coast of Southern California, creating what I would like to call an even bigger problem, fossil stools.
Oh.
Kill me. Andrew Yang has broken with his the Democratic Party, and become an independent. Next, I really hope he breaks with Asian Americans and becomes racially independent, so he can no longer put the word math on a hat without us calling it what it really is, which is pretty racist. Nike appears to be shuttering some stores in Israel, which BDS advocates are taking as a win, and with others taking it as the downsizing of a multinational conglomerate, like a giant belching a bit of food up from lunch and then wiping it away with a napkin. You know, whichever. And school libraries are becoming battlegrounds as parents rally to have books that allegedly teach critical race theory, but actually are just written by people of color removed from their shelves. And I would liken that to the destruction of books in 1940s Germany, but I was educated in the year 2021, and 1940s Germany is all about like great boots and Volkswagens. And it just... and finally, comedian Dave Chappelle continued to rail against cancel culture in his sixth Netflix special, which is all you need to know about cancel culture. For everything else, this is the week where. This was the week where a whistleblower behind the trove of internal Facebook documents went public and testified before Congress that a website that began as a place to rank girls is in fact harmful to girls and to kids and to parents and to parents' parents, pretty much everybody. My mom, for example, has not been radicalized by Facebook, but she definitely got caught up in like a face cream subscription scam, you know? So I just want to play a little bit of what that whistleblower had to say. This was very, very brave of her to come forward. This is former product manager Frances Hagen.
The documents I have provided to Congress prove that Facebook has repeatedly misled the public about what its own research reveals about the safety of children, the efficacy of its artificial intelligence systems, and its role in spreading divisive and extreme messages. I came forward because I believe that every human being deserves the dignity of the truth. The severity of this crisis demands that we break out of our previous regulatory frames. But there's one thing that I hope everyone takes away from these disclosures. It is that Facebook can change, but is clearly not going to do so on its own. My fear is that without action, divisive and extremist behaviors we see today are only the beginning. What we saw in Myanmar and are now seeing in Ethiopia are only the opening chapters of a story so terrifying, no one wants to read the end of it.
Cool. I always want to read the end.
But do read the rest of my document, by the way.
Yeah. That being said, here's all the documents. So that was pretty intense. And the analysis that I've been reading about this whole testimony, because like we've known that Facebook has literally just been a platform for authoritarians and misinformation, and that they love that stuff. Not only did she prove that, but it seems like because she focused on women and children, that like the right is kind of paying attention. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So this is from Slate, and I wanted to read this. Quote, protecting kids online, which happened to be the title of this Senate hearing, is a pretty uncontroversial tone in politics or otherwise. The top senators on the committee holding the hearing, Chair Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut and Ranking Member Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, were on the same wavelength in their opening statements, focusing on Facebook's internal research, which set the tone for the rest of the proceedings. Senators lined up to talk about their own children and expressed dismay that social media is adversely affecting vulnerable users like teens. Even Republican Senator Ted Cruz and Mike Lee, both known for harping on the supposed anti-conservative bias on social media, focused their questioning on how Facebook targets harmful posts at certain users. Cruz couldn't resist throwing in one question on bias towards the end, almost as a wink to his conservative base, but he quickly moved on. Teddy. But But it's interesting because it's like here you have, and I do feel like it helps that she's like sort of like a pretty blonde woman who's like not really talking about, she's not really making it political, but she says like children a lot, and she
Right.
talks about women a lot. I don't know. What did you make of her revelations? Were they surprising to you?
Not at all. Not at all. I think what she's doing is a great thing, but not at all. If I
Yeah.
were at the hearing, I would be like, excuse me, I believe that kids use TikTok. Grandmas are on Facebook. Like Facebook is for old people. I'm sorry, but like that's like the oldest. Like if MySpace was still around, like Facebook is all that's left for the old people,
Yeah. Exactly. No, they don't even use Instagram.
No. So it's really like it's about our and our moms and our their mental health. Let's save the kids for a different conversation, but 100% what you're saying is right.
So basically they're referring to us as kids. Are we young now, Sammy?
We are. I mean, we're millennials. We'll always be kids. Yeah.
We will always have the bank accounts of children, just a little
exactly. Our little tiny little
bank.
cute. Oh, yeah.
Here's a little bit more of what she said, and I have nothing but like agreement and respect for her because I've been in that Facebook algorithm game. We're in it now, but here she is.
Facebook knows that when they pick out the content that we focus on using computers, we spend more time on their platform, they make more money. The dangers of engagement-based ranking are that Facebook knows that content that elicits an extreme reaction from you is more likely to get a click, a comment, or reshare. And it's interesting because those clicks and comments and reshares aren't even necessarily for your benefit. It's because they know that other people will produce more content if they get the likes and comments and reshares. They prioritize content in your feed so that you will give little hits of dopamine to your friends so they will create more content. And they have run experiments on people, producer-side experiments, where they have confirmed this.
Times, so, yeah, New York Times. What's wrong with giving little hits of dopamine to your friends?
Right. It's like, again, agree 100% with everything she's saying, but it almost sounds like that was like a coaching session for people trying to beat the algorithm. Like what you have to do is say the most divisive stuff. You get more engagement. And it'll give you a little hit of dopamine,
I straight up have given, early on, because AJ Plus was an earlier adopter of Facebook videos. I've given some talks, although it pains me. I think maybe 2 sessions. One was in Austria, so it doesn't really count. Shout out to all the fans in Austria, where I was like, look, if you want to get clicks and do well on Facebook, you need to make people laugh, cry, or puke in the first 3 seconds of your video. That's it. Otherwise, you're being scrolled past. And it's amazing. Like, that's been obvious. But I think what she's saying is more interesting to me, which is she's saying their algorithm supports that. Whereas I think a lot of us are like, well, the human condition is such that we all like things that are terrible. And
right.
It's a little true, but I think she's basically making the argument that no, it is their bottom line that's doing that. And that's going to get the eyeballs. And there's nothing. She kept on repeating something like it puts profits over the public and public safety always, like profits over public safety. And again, we've known this. I can't believe, Sammy, I feel like maybe, I don't know if you have any more familiarity with the tech world than I do, but I'm like, even just the corporate world, how does someone like Zuckerberg, how's he still there? Like, after all these scandals, don't you usually just you hand it to somebody else, you let somebody else step in? I mean, Sheryl Sandberg's also fucked up, so I don't know if she'd be a good candidate. But it's just amazing he's still at the helm.
He's a sociopath. I mean, he's that invested to this whole thing. Like any normal person be like, I'm going to get my money. I'm going to get out. Bezos just stepped out, Gates stepped down, but Zuckerberg's like, no, I like this. It's we should be scared. I mean, I hate to bring astrology into this because I do it for everything, but he is a Taurus and it's a very Taurian trait of him.
Ooh, I am dating a Taurus.
Great guy. I love him. Love him. Great guy.
Yeah. But they are stubborn.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess
if you look empirically at a lot of like Taurus rulers, like Hitler was a Taurus, Saddam Hussein was a Taurus, very, again, MacLeod is the best Taurus ever to walk the earth.
Clearly.
For sure. But Zuckerberg is in the other category. Yeah.
Bro, that's interesting. I know I first of all, respect to the astrology. I was definitely saying this was all we didn't even talk about. This was the week where Facebook went down for a whole day. WhatsApp went down. And my little crystal ass was like, oh yes, Mercury retrograde and breaking up big tech.
Yep.
Here we go. It's all happening. Because did they even answer for that? I don't even know. I feel like they just they were like, oops. Anyway.
Yeah. They're like, don't mind us. But I think it's interesting how everybody wanted to know Zuckerberg's response to this, as if it matters. What do you think he's going to do? All he said was this doesn't even make sense. It makes perfect fucking sense. What are you saying? He's so invested in this. His whole mindset, he believes that Facebook is good for humanity. And we all know, every person knows that it is not, but we're all addicted. You can't get the person who loves cocaine to stop doing cocaine. Somebody would have to intervene at some point. But of course, that would be against capitalism. So what are we going to do? Right. So,
oh my God, my face when Instagram doesn't reload. I was on a plane all day, so thank God. But it's been down before, and I'm like, I don't want to see the same piece of sourdough bread. I just get it's very upsetting to me. I think the real thing, obviously, is Facebook. She did not say that Facebook should be broken up. She didn't present a lot of solutions, but she did say that there are solutions, that they know how to make the platform a better place for all people. They're just not doing it, and because there's no monetary incentive to do that. Of course, you always got to look at who's having a hard time with this news to know who stands the most to lose if Facebook were to ever change its algorithm. And that happens to be not necessarily the senators who are on the committee, but Republicans who are making a killing off of Facebook. People like Dan Bongino and Ben Shapiro, who do incredibly well on Facebook. They're the top performing posts all the time. So this is a scam, declared Dan Bongino, dedicating the first segment of his podcast to attacking Hagen. I'm begging conservatives out there, don't fall into this trap. It's clearly a left-wing op. Yeah. Fellow podcaster Ben Shapiro carried a similar tune. Any possible legislation resulting from Hagen's testimony would produce, quote, top-down tyranny, he said in a video, or top-down tyranny, posted to his Facebook page on Wednesday. Literally, I mean, this is like when Candace Owens was decrying Facebook on Facebook, and that was the top post.
Right. Again, it's for older people who are angry. That's all. If you're old and you're angry, you're going to defend Facebook because you love it.
Yes. And if you're a right-winger grifting off of it. But yeah, anyway, we'll see where this goes. I'm not holding my breath on this, but my God, at least it's beginning to dawn that this company has zero interest in actually making change. Let's move on to our next topic. Here we go. This was a week where a little bit darker, a lot darker. This was the week where, in news from, oh my God, is this real life? A man from Cumberland, Maryland, allegedly shot and killed his brother and his brother's wife because his brother was a pharmacist administering the COVID-19 vaccine, and he was convinced that the vaccine is actually killing people instead of doing what it's actually doing, which is saving lives. So this just happened. Let's see. I want to go to, Jeffrey Burnham told his mother, this is the suspect, told his mother that he had to confront his older brother, Brian Robinette, because he was poisoning people by administering the COVID-19 vaccine, telling his mother, quote, Brian knows something, according to the new charging documents filed against Burnham. According to the documents, Evelyn Burnham, 83, called the Cumberland Police Department because of her son's mental stability after he made statements about the FBI being after them both. She told the police in one call that her son lived with her and kept a security system in his bedroom at their home, police wrote in documents. So the FBI was aware that this guy was unstable. Now, look, I'm not saying give more power to the FBI, but it's always so upsetting when we realized that someone had had alerted authorities when somebody's unstable, and they were not able to prevent that person from then going and shooting his brother and his brother's wife in their home, and additionally killing a friend of his mother. Frightening. But the guy was like clearly convinced of this. He was arrested on October 1st at the Billy Motel and Bar in Davis, West Virginia, after flagging down a firefighter and told him that he had, quote, been forced to kill 3 people.
Oh my God.
And this is in addition to him being, I think he was at a coffee shop or something and said, hey, you're going to see my name on TV. I'm going to be famous, etc. I mean, straight up delusional stuff. This is my thing with this story. This is a story that a lot of news outlets won't cover. Why? Because it's salacious, it's sad, it's tragic. And, it's kind of like, well, a mentally ill man was mentally ill and blah. That's bullshit. This is a story about a guy who was able to get a gun despite his condition, number one, and number two, probably has been ingesting copious amounts of propaganda and lies from people like Dan Bongino and Ben Shapiro on Facebook, to say nothing of Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson or any of the folks who've been fomenting misinformation around the vaccine. So if you take in enough of that, it will straight up drive you crazy. And if you're already unstable, this is what happens. I mean, I'm like, I feel like we have to cover these stories. We have to talk about this because literally nobody else does. It's just like, imagine if this had happened from a left winger. If somebody was like, every time a police officer is killed, or every time there's some sort of, like alleged violence against somebody from the right, you know what I mean? I don't want to make this partisan, but essentially that, where it's like a politically motivated killing. The right has a field day with it. They don't let it go. They make sure we know these people's names. Remember the young woman who was supposedly killed by an undocumented immigrant on the pier in San Francisco, where a man found a gun, picked it up, and it straight up went off in his hand. The right-wing media made that a story for years and made it the backbone of their anti-immigrant, push because of this one instance. Anyway, so I don't know, Sammy, thoughts on this story?
Yeah, great story to make funny. My only, it's a very serious story, very, very sad. I will say anybody staying at the Billy Motel probably is a murderer. Could have told you that. Yeah, it's really sad, and yet another mental health case, turned murderer. And I think it is interesting that, I read the story and it said he was charged with 2nd-degree murder, and I'm assuming that's because of the mental health. Because you understand, like first degree is where you like premeditate and plan the murder. 2nd degree is like, oops, just killed these people, right? So is it a 2nd-degree murder? I mean, it sounds more like he had been planning this for a while.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like 1st degree, but yeah, maybe because of his mental state, it's 2nd-degree murder. I mean, and this is the thing with, like, it's just awful because you feel like he is a victim himself.
Right.
I mean, and this is like, we've talked about other really dark stories like this, like the QAnon dad who killed his young children because he thought they were the devil.
Right.
Like, this is ostensibly a cult that believes that, children are to be protected, and the babies, and Democrats are killing and hurting children, but yet he had to kill his children in order to save them. I mean, so it's just like one side of the equation here is supporting this kind of delusion. That's how easy it is. That's what a slippery slope this anti-vax stuff is.
Right. It just highlights the problem that we have of this politicization of the vaccine. The extent to which it's divided us so much, which now you have a situation where this could happen. And that's a horrible thing, to say that vaccines are killing people when every data set shows the opposite of that. So in order to push that big of a lie, there are culpable people here who've been spreading it, and whoever they are, they should know that they're causing stuff like this,
Absolutely. I mean, there's just no accountability. I believe I believe for the first time, I think in the UK, not for the first time, but in the UK, a media outlet is being fined for spreading lies about the COVID-19 vaccine. And I mean, we cover story after story all the time, whether on TYT or on the Bitchuation Room, of like, you know, different right wingers, different conservative hosts who are fomenting all this misinformation and spreading it. And they don't get fined. Like there's nothing, you know, there's just, it's like, well, the ratings are good. Anyway, Sammy, I wanted to digress a little bit because, you know, I haven't talked to you necessarily about like how you're doing. I know you actually have suffered long COVID. You got COVID early on, and I know you had like health stuff on top of that.
Yeah. Well, the health stuff I think was from it. I mean, after all, I think the COVID was the catalyst in a sense. So I had the long COVID, or as I call it, that long on my Bumble profile. You know, and the thing is, I didn't know what I had for the longest time. Doctors told me I had multiple sclerosis. Some thought I had a stroke. What happened was exactly a year ago, Francesca. They called me on this date. My doctor called me, and it was a 1-star doctor. It was like free healthcare in SoCal. Well, actually, me and Matt talked about it. We're on the same healthcare. We had
fuck Kaiser. Oh my god.
I had a 1-star. She had a 1-star review on Google, and she left a voicemail at 4:30 p.m. saying, "Hey, we got your MRI scans. Your neck came back normal. Your back came back normal, and your brain is abnormal. So call your neurologist right away." Hung up the phone and called her back. She was gone for the day. Called the neurologist. He was gone for the day. So for 24 hours, I had to live with abnormal brain scan and what that could possibly mean. Yeah, it was really, really rough times. And then they found a lesion on my right brain, and they were like, "Yeah, it's multiple sclerosis." So she like definitively, she's like, you have multiple sclerosis. Like, well, I was like, it's just one lesion. She's like, yeah, but there could be more. I'm like, yeah, but that's not like your stars on Google, you know? She was a singular star doctor.
I love how you obviously you found that she had 1 star later or did you seek out 1 star to be like, you know what? Let's give her a chance.
Let's give her a chance. Really increase her rating. I actually did seek her out because she was the only doctor available for telehealth in the area.
I see.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
And when did you actually get diagnosed? Like, oh yeah, you have COVID or you had COVID, and then these are the lasting effects of it.
Yeah, so I later took an antibodies test and tested positive for the antibodies, but I still at that point was not conclusive. It was until later when a friend sent an article showing that a lot of people had the same lesions in the same location from having long COVID.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I ended up getting COVID again at the beginning of this year, and it felt exactly like I had felt last year. So that was like, I put it two and two together, and I was like, it had to be COVID.
Damn.
And I'm talking, I put out a blog post, and like a lot of people hit me up, like, I have the same thing. So like a lot of people are going through a very similar, and it affects everybody differently. You have some weird kind of neurological response or whatever. So,
yeah, 100%. Have you, and this is like, you've obviously gotten the vaccine?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know it's like, you know, I mean, you got hella antibodies now. Twice.
I've got Delta right here. I've got Gamma right here.
You got Lambda somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's crazy. And I hope there's more research. There's so little research on long COVID. I have another dear friend who also has it. So anyway, my condolences, and also sending you lots of love and healing and all that. Thank you. Shout out to everybody else, because it is no joke.
Yeah, and I'm 100% better. So anybody who is listening with long COVID or knows someone with long COVID, tell them to hang in there and read my blog if you want. I'll plug it at the end. But I actually wrote like a list of like 15 things that really, really helped me.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah. All right. Well, we got to move on. We have to move on because we've got such a great guest for you all. You may have heard about him. He unseated a longtime incumbent in New York in Congress. Big moves supported by Justice Dems. We're going to get into everything: Build Back Better Act, U.S. defense spending, what it's like to be a progressive and in Congress. This is The Sitch. He's a former middle school principal, an education advocate, raised in Harlem, who defeated a 16-term incumbent, Elliot Engel, last year in New York's 16th Congressional District. Please welcome one of the newest members of the squad, Congressman Jamaal Bowman.
Peace and love. What's up, everyone? How y'all doing?
Good. How are you? Are you tired of Congress yet, Congressman?
No, not yet. Still pretty good, despite the, Build Back Better negotiations and, still way too much money going to war and not enough focus on poor Black and brown people. But we're getting there. We're working. We're doing the work.
I mean, you having worked in education and with children, it's like, I feel like it's going to take a lot for you to get tired,
Yeah, people have been asking me the last couple of weeks, like, what's harder, Congress or being a middle school principal? And it's being a middle school principal, hands down. Congress behaves like middle schoolers, but when you're actually a middle school principal, you have hundreds of kids in your care that you're responsible for. And if one gets hurt or worse, it's on you. So there's no pressure like that type of pressure.
Sure. But you are now representing a whole lot of Americans in the halls of Congress. So, I mean, in a way, not that you'd ever want to say that your district or children, but you do have a responsibility, and it's a lot. And it's almost been a year, or how many months are we into your term now?
9 months officially.
Okay.
But in your district, when you win the primary, you're kind of in. So we did have a general, didn't take that for granted. And after the November general, we kind of got started. I went to Washington, did orientation and all of that. So 9 months officially, but about a year unofficially.
Yeah. And I want to talk about some of the amendments you've introduced. You're not, sitting on your laurels at all. You're really active and out in front, and I see still in your district. But I want to talk about the Build Back Better Act, which is, again, the second piece of this infrastructure bill, that includes so many really game-changing things for working Americans were it to pass. If it does pass, what would it mean for your district? What would it mean for the people that you represent?
Yeah, so it would be transformative. It would transform their lives overnight. In the same way that the child tax credit that we've already passed and extended through December is transforming lives in my district. So it's going to pass. What the question is, at what amount in terms of top line number, but also which programs are we going to be able to implement? So we're pushing for everything, as we should be, because 3.5 was the compromise. It was 6 or 12 or 16, depending on who you speak to. But it would be transformative. It would be investments in public housing, which haven't happened in over a decade. Investments in affordable housing, which is critical now that COVID has made so many more millions housing insecure. Additional investments in workforce development, which is what we need at this time because so many have lost their jobs. Investments in home care, child care, lowering prescription drugs, 3K programs. In a district like mine, where you have pockets with poverty rates as high as 20%, and over 50% of people severely rent and mortgage burdened, it would transform lives, and I can't wait for us to get this done.
Yeah, especially, I mean, I was just in New York, and I'm just floored by the amount of gentrification, since when I lived there only 10 years ago, but it's just it's a huge issue for, I know, your district, in addition to so many other things. What do you make of, you joined the Congressional Progressive Caucus. It's been largely symbolic, but now under the leadership of someone like Representative Pramila Jayapal, you guys are throwing your weight around, sort of making sure that you pass this, this infrastructure or the reconciliation bill, the Build Back Better Act, in addition to what Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema want. So how does that feel? Do you feel like, you know, that someone like yourself, like growing the squad, has had real impact? Are you seeing that? Do you feel like even someone like you being there has emboldened folks like Representative Jayapal?
Yeah, I feel very privileged and inspired to be in Congress and to be a member of the CPC, especially in this moment. I mean, we have to understand there were no negotiations happening at all. We were simply going to do the hard infrastructure bill and take whatever crumbs we can get on the human infrastructure side of it. But the CPC and under Pramila's leadership, we were very transparent with our priorities very early on. Congresswoman, Chairwoman Jayapal was in constant communication with Senator Sanders, Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi in the White House. And we were very clear on where we stood, and we were all behind her 100%. And it wasn't just us. It wasn't just the CPC. The speaker was on board. The president was on board. We were actually leading the charge in terms of the president's agenda. We were out front on that. So it's been really exciting and inspiring to be a part of it. And yeah, you know, not just myself in the squad, but the progressive movement on the outside, continuing to engage in electoral politics, engage in movement building, engage in the work, I think is shifted, you know, leadership in Congress more to the left, which is a really exciting thing.
Absolutely. I mean, you've been on the outside as an advocate as well. And I mean, there were dark days, and even in just when I was coming up as an activist, we had no faith in the political process. You know, there was no kind of squad. There was no like, who's your favorite congressperson? It was like, what are you talking about? You know? And I think, you know, that can there's a double-edged sword there. A lot of people hate the idea that there's a celebritydom to someone like, you know, Representative Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. But I mean, I don't know, personally, I'm just speaking from personal opinion. I think that's good. I think we should know our Congress people. We should you know, we shouldn't put them necessarily on a pedestal of untouchability, but it's good to know them. It's good to like watch their moves, what they're doing, you know, have a more direct line and have some faith. That being said, if you were to go to the Met Gala, Congressman, what would your dress say? Like, what would you?
What would I say? It would say babies over billionaires. Something. It would say something like that.
I like that.
And stay tuned for legislation bearing the same name coming soon. I just gave you a tease. Babies over billionaires coming soon. But that's what my suit would say.
And I assume that has something to do with early child care.
Yes. It has something to do with the real health and well-being and future of our democracy and our planet, not what, you know, my more moderate and conservative colleagues think is the future, which is rooted in, you know, Elon Musk and Richard Branson traveling in space while people are getting shot in my district and killed. So yeah, it's rooted in uplifting people who need us the most.
You know, something else that happened between the last time I talked to you and now is there was an insurrection. Speaking of the right, and you were there, front row seats. I mean, like, tell me briefly, sort of like, where were you, and also like, how is it now to be legislating with some people who still have not sort of come to Jesus, so to speak, as to, in terms of how what a devastating and dark moment and illegal, you know, action that was. I mean, you're alongside, you know, congressmen who actively stoked and fanned the flames of that event.
Yeah, I think it's downplayed way too much. Like, we don't talk about it nearly enough. Like, that was an attack on everything we believe from within, from our own people, right? Yeah. From other Americans. So it was scary. It could have been much worse. I mean, it was bad, but it could have been way worse if they were more prepared and more sinister with what they did. I mean, they could have burned the whole place down, right? Yeah. So, you know, it's funny. It's interesting because they're almost like the ones who fan the flames and support that kind of thing. They're almost unseen and unheard. They're almost invisible.
Mm.
I don't even engage with them. I rarely look in their direction, because they not only are there ideological beliefs, but I believe that those people want to do me harm.
Mm.
And if killing me and my family and others like me will give them power, they will do that. So I can't even engage with them or even look at them. And then when you think about it, it's like, damn, I've always wanted to like drive through the country, just travel the country and see different corners of the country. And now I'm like, shit, I really can't go there, or I really should not go there, or anywhere where there's money flowing into majority Taylor Green. Like, I can't go in that area because it's really, really bananas. So this is why we have to both maintain the majority in the House and Senate next year, but also we have to shift paradigms and change the American mindset as well, because Donald Trump just destroyed our sense of reality.
Mhm.
And then there are people piggybacking on that. So it's I hope we continue to engage each other in a way that roots us in reality and roots us in humanity. That's the other part of my work as well.
Do you feel like, other than the FBI sort of going after some of the people who did storm the Capitol, do you feel like Congress is taking January 6th seriously? I know there's a number of commissions. I know there's interviews going on right now, obviously subpoenas of former Trump officials. What do you want to see happen? Representative Cori Bush does have, introduced, I believe, a piece of legislation that said, look, we need to kick the people like Representative Gosar, Representative Andy Biggs, and these people who were like part of the Stop the Steal stuff, kick them out. This is unconstitutional. But anyway, we know that's not going to happen. But, any thoughts on what you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, we formed a commission, excuse me, and the commission is gonna do its work. And, whatever the findings are, I hope those findings are transparent and people are held accountable.
Yeah.
What historically kind of happens with commissions is there's not really enough transparency. There's not really enough education on exactly what the findings were, and then accountability is minimal, right? In many ways. So, in New York City, you get caught jumping the turnstile, you might spend weeks or months on Rikers Island. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, in our society, if you commit some type of political crime or Wall Street crime, there's not really much accountability. So I'm hoping for transparency. I'm hoping for accountability. But
if you jump over Nancy Pelosi's desk, there is less accountability.
But even deeper than that, I mean, we already, even before this, there were reports of FBI. FBI had reports of white supremacist infiltration in law enforcement across the country. And how many people even knew about that or are aware of that? And what are we doing about that right now? How many of us in Congress are looking the other way and allowing that stuff to just exist? So that's what we're up against. And that's what we're trying to build power across the country to change.
We just talked about actually the FBI raid on the NYPD's union hall and those documents, and then the resignation of the head of the NYPD's union, police union.
Yeah.
I mean, to be continued, we will see, but there are whispers that potentially there was a far right extremist element to the police union, which of course very well is not unbelievable at all.
Well, the NYPD police union endorsed Donald Trump in the last election, right? So, that was huge. And this is the thing, right? Because we get into these conversations and people, want to call us anti-police and all that. No one's anti-police. We're pro accountability, right? Like when you hold a badge, when you carry a gun, you are given a certain amount of power and esteem and responsibility in our society. And you have to meet those demands, the demands of that standard. And if you don't, you need to be held accountable for that. And unfortunately, time and time again, we see law enforcement officers not held accountable for things. So, we just need to, again, if we're going to be a healthy, thriving democracy for all, there just needs to be kosher behavior and accountability across the board.
Yeah, 100%. We could talk forever about that. I got a lot of questions, but I did want to ask you, right now, Republicans are trying to make the Biden's border crisis stick, like that's their latest thing, given the number of refugees and asylum seekers and migrants coming through the southern border, especially from Haiti. And we saw those awful images of, mounted CBP with whips or not whips, but they were being used like whips. On those reins.
Yes.
Yeah. On which anyone making that distinguishment, like, honestly, I don't like, please leave. But it was awful. And, this administration, so on the one hand, you got the Republicans. On the other hand, you've got this administration saying that was awful. We're looking into it. We will investigate, etc. And yet they're continuing with deportations. They have accepted many thousands of Haitian migrants into the country, but they are still deporting people under that Title 42, right, which Trump enacted, allowing, under the pandemic, you can not accept asylum seekers. If you had to boil it down to a grade, maybe, or just what's your assessment of how this administration thus far, also 9 months in, has been handling the immigration situation and not crisis at the border, but what's going on at the border?
Yeah, Trump's presidency made it heinous, like his language, and it was vitriol that was part of how he his immigration policy was rooted in that. But Obama's policies weren't great either, and now Biden is looking to do a little bit better. We need to repeal Title 42, something that I've called for and we called for. We need to increase the amount of immigrants we're bringing into our country. And we need more investment there for infrastructure so that we can accept more asylum seekers. Right now, all of the investment, the majority of the investment is going to CBP. Mm-hmm. And I visited the border. I went to Laredo, Texas to meet with CBP officials and meet with volunteers with Catholic Charities who are literally providing humanitarian aid. And, if I can contrast it for you, the humanitarian aid and the Catholic Charity volunteers were doing their humanitarian work in like a shack, and CBP was doing its work in like a fortress, right? So you could see the clear contrast in resources. And when we visited the CBP facility, a few things stuck out. And one I still haven't figured out. Number one, there were like 20 officers touring the facility with us. And I didn't realize why there were so many officers. They took like 1 million pictures. I don't know why they did that either.
Okay. Of you sort of there?
Of me and my team.
Okay.
It was weird. I don't know what they're going to do with those pictures, but they took a zillion of them. And
they'll probably put it on the wall, like, sort of old Italian pizzerias. Like, hey, look, Representative Bowman loves eating here.
Like, do the right thing. Yeah, exactly. So that was one thing that stuck out. Another thing is they took us into this room to show us images of, these horrible, mean immigrants coming across the border and doing all these bad things, right? They were very, very intentional with their imagery. But when I asked them, a question, how many of the immigrants that you engage with have actually committed a crime?
Yeah.
And they said less than 10%. So we're putting all these resources into CBP, and at least 90%, and advocates would tell you it's way more than that, at least 90% of the people they engage with are not criminals. The only crime is trying to seek asylum in our country. So that was the second thing that stood out. The third thing is, they have the area with all of these jail cells, and there were probably about 10 to 12 open jail cells with no one in it. And then there was one jail cell that had like 10 people in it. And I asked them, I'm like, why don't you separate these people into the other cells so they're not on top of each other, especially because you just told me you are not testing for COVID. So you're not testing for COVID and you're putting them in cells with each other. They may get COVID, and this is something that's actually killing people. And when I asked the question, it was almost like he didn't think about it. And it's like, we have this culture where if you could commit a crime, and most crimes are committed to survive. If you commit a crime, you're just treated like you're not human, like that, and not too long after that, I visited Rikers Island here in New York. Mm-hmm. And there's a humanitarian crisis in Rikers Island, right now. And it's for the people who are incarcerated and the people who work there. It is untenable. It is something needs to happen right now. It is bad. And it's a system of inhumanity, which is everywhere, unfortunately.
No, and you've been a huge advocate of now I'm gonna blank on what it is, but
what? I haven't been an advocate for anything.
You're an advocate for so many things. Restorative justice. There it is. Brain worked. I mean, it's like, yes. Why are you? And especially on the border. I mean, Rikers Island. I mean, how many exposés have there been done? How many? How many times? How many deaths? How many suicides? To know that you need to just tear it all down. I mean, in my opinion. But I mean, on the border, it's like you cross the border, that in of itself is supposedly a crime. And he didn't even think about it because, these are just criminals in his mind. So why would you treat anyone with humanity? And if we already treat criminals inhumanely, well, there you go. Welcome to America. And I was just going to say, we've seen images of CBP throwing out the water that Catholic Charities and other, humanitarian groups on the border are setting out for migrants who are, on the verge of death, really. And you're like, what? So, I mean, again, just to juxtapose what you're saying, what the Catholic Charities are actually doing are helping people survive and actually make it, at least just live. Whereas CBP is more criminalizing, scaring, detaining, not necessarily humanely as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move to, I want to talk a little bit about some of the amendments that you've introduced and some of the things that obviously I know other bills that you've introduced. You can tell me. We've got the babies over billionaires, which I love. But in terms of U.S. military policy, the House recently passed their annual defense authorization bill. You and other progressives tried to squeeze in a couple of amendments that would have really, tried to begin to, ramp down our, just overly robust U.S. war machine internationally, the lack of accountability, the endless spending for military ventures. You had a couple of amendments about ending money for U.S. war in Syria, and also making sure the executive branch, someone is looking out for this, where Trump profited from those wars personally. And so making sure that the executive branch is not able to contract themselves essentially for some of that defense spending. How successful were those amendments? And was there some movement? I know a lot of progressives were like, man, why do we pass this budget again? Was there openings? Did you feel?
So shout out to Catherine Clark, first of all, because that amendment that I introduced that passed was actually her amendment, but she was at the White House, so she couldn't introduce it. So I got a chance to introduce it, and my name was attached, and it passed, which was awesome. So shout out to Catherine Clark for hooking me up. And that was an amendment, to your point, that just doesn't allow the executive branch to profit from federal contracts, which should be common sense. No one in Congress can, but Donald Trump did his own thing, as a white patriarch. But anyway, so there was that one. And then I also introduced one that, yes, pulled us out of Syria, but also wasn't the immediate next step. The next step was Congress has the authority. Congress has war power authority not the executive, right? This goes to repealing the 2001 AUMF.
Yes.
So my amendment would give some of that authority back to Congress as it relates to Syria, and allow us to both debate should we be in Syria, and then vote on us being in Syria. And that's the amendment that I passed, and it didn't pass, but it got a lot of support. So it moved the needle a bit. And I got to say this because this is really hilarious. So 21 Republicans voted for this amendment. And as I was going into my office, Matt Gaetz stopped me to show me the list. He was like, hey, look at how many Republicans voted for your amendment. And I'm like, I didn't even want to like stand next to the I'm like, yo.
You're like, who's watching? Who's taking a photo?
Yeah, I appreciate. I was like, thanks for the list, man. And I just got out of Dodge, but it was just like, of all people, Matt Gaetz is going to show me this list. It was crazy.
That's so. You were like, ooh, what am I implicated?
But then you look at the list and you see like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and all these, QAnon. It was just not a list I want to be associated with. Appreciate the vote, but just a crazy list.
No, thanks. I mean, that's so interesting because I feel like after years and years and years in Congress, I think some politicians obviously use that as as like, hey, look what I did. I got all of these Republicans on board. And no doubt, like after a certain time in any workplace, you're going to have to make a certain amount of peace. The problem is, how much peace do you make so you don't sacrifice, your morals and values and what you're there to do, right? It's an interesting, I think it was Representative Swalwell who said this, like after January 6th, you have these Congress people trying to just like glad hand you and be nice to you. And you're like, no, man, we're not on the same team. But yet that gets so rewarded by the media to be like, oh, look at this bipartisanship. Look how they worked with not a convicted, but like accused, maybe sex trafficker, Matt Gaetz. Like,
yeah, it's really bizarre. It's a bizarre place in many of those ways. And let me just recognize one other amendment. Shout out to Ro Khanna, introducing an amendment to sort of handcuff Saudi Arabia's ability to support continuing war in Yemen. So that was a huge one, and I believe that one passed. So that was awesome. Like I part of my advocacy is not just anti-war overall, but really highlighting what's happening in Yemen and the humanitarian crisis there, and really, holding Saudi Arabia accountable so they could stop supporting the conflict there. So shout out to Ro Khanna. That was a huge amendment that passed. And yes, overall, the needle's moving a bit because you have, people like myself and Corey in Congress now, and Engel and others. So it is moving in the right direction. Still not enough resources going to the Caribbean, not enough resources going to the continent of Africa. Still way too much going to just weapons manufacturers. So still a long way to go, but some movement.
Yeah. And I really did want to ask you about your vote for the Iron Dome, the $1 billion additional funding. I know it's a touchy subject. I know there's a lot of division and different opinions on this. And I know just even today, like Senator Sanders said that he would vote for it if that meant also getting money for Gaza and the rebuilding of Gaza. I know it's not an easy vote for you. There's criticism, from a lot of folks who, obviously are more from the left and talk about Palestinian human rights. Can you just tell me about that vote and if you can, and why you voted yes, and how, the difficulty in that, if there was any?
Yeah, so, we're never going to stop fighting for Palestinian human rights, and we're never going to stop talking about the occupation and working towards doing something about it. And that's what I encourage all of the groups to work with us towards getting done, because we need to do a lot more work in that area. On the other hand, or in addition to that, I represent a large Jewish constituency, right? Mm-hmm. And many are progressive Jews, and some are moderate, some are more conservative. And, I have to do, my job is to represent my constituency and all of my constituency. So, the letters and calls we got coming into our office was more along the lines of, please support this as opposed to not. I also, I also want to make sure, and I'm careful not sending the message or the perception that it's not okay for any country to defend itself, and that it's okay to, quote unquote, kill Jews. Like, that's like, I don't want to send that message indirectly either. So, so I voted yes on it to make sure I'm doing the job of supporting all of my constituents. But as I've said before, since the vote, like we got to do something about the occupation. There's a humanitarian crisis happening in Gaza, and we're still going to continue to uplift that issue and do work around that issue as well.
For sure. I mean, I will just say I am not in your constituency, but I can say I understand why you voted the way that you did. That makes a lot of sense to me. I don't agree with it necessarily, because I do think we have to basically defund a lot of the money that we've been giving to the Israeli military, especially. Maybe if it was just, you can use this for non-military things, that would even be a step in the right direction. So I hope, as someone on the outside, that there's more strength and numbers behind you. And in your, there's a lot of progressive Jews out there who are against the occupation as well, and they're not for something like this. But I totally hear you, and I understand why you had to vote the way that you did. Any last thing that you want? What are you looking forward to? Anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, looking forward to passing this Build Back Better Act at the largest number possible. And there's a specific part of it that I want to highlight. So $2.5 billion towards violence reduction and violence prevention. That is critical for my district because in parts of my district, the gun violence is out of control. The murder rate and the attempted murder rate is out of control. And we need a restorative and holistic approach in dealing with that. And it can't just be law enforcement by itself. That's not enough. It has to be law enforcement working with community activists and organizers, working with education, working with healthcare, and we need to invest accordingly there. There are complex traumas happening in our communities and have been prior to COVID. So that's like a top of the agenda issue for us.
Yeah. What's in that? What's in part of the funding? If it isn't going to law enforcement, like what does feel like it could be?
So we have, So we have programs called SNUG, SUV, which is Stand Up to Violence, and BRAG. I forget what that's for. But what these are credible messengers with a history of maybe being formerly incarcerated or spending time in the street that people in the street respond to, who can act as mentors, who can act as first responders, who can act as people who are who can stop retaliations from happening. So that's a part of it, just investing more in people and programs like that so they can be more engaged in the community.
That's huge. That's like a street social worker kind of situation.
Yeah, street soldiers, right? So then there's also workforce development. There's also education support. There's also housing support. There are programs called like ceasefire programs across the country in Oakland and Boston that have done something like this holistically and have dramatically decreased community violence. So that's what the money will go towards. But it's not just the money, it's the implementation here at the local level. And that's a lot of the work that we're doing to make sure the money's implemented accordingly. And that my expertise in education can lend a voice to how we do that.
Yes, 100%. I'm worried about some of the violence here in California because the Dodgers are going to be playing the Giants very soon in the playoffs. And it's just going to get very real. I mean, I'm a little serious, but I'm also joking. But like, I'm just like, oh man, the stabs, the people are going to be way too lit about this.
Yes.
Anywho, Representative Bowman, thank you so much for making the time to talk to little old me and this podcast. But these folks who listen are kind of the best. So I want you to know that these are the best people. They're funny. They got a good sense of humor. They're progressive. They're lefties. They're the best.
Awesome.
and they support you. So thank you for all of your work. Best of luck in the future. And congratulations on also everything you've been able to do. And just, we need you. So thank you for being the inside strategy while we're on the outside rooting.
Yes. Look up Green New Deal for public schools.
Okay. What is it? Can you just tell me what that means? I'm like, I'm going to look it up, but what would it mean?
It's our landmark signature public education policy, ending, building new schools, retrofitting schools so they are not dependent on fossil fuels, and they become energy centers for the community, grow your own teacher programs, innovative science curriculum, Green New Deal for public schools, equal to taking 17 million cars off the road, investments in Title I, special education, and teacher programs at unprecedented levels. So look out for that.
My brother is a public school teacher in Oakland, and he is on board. I am on board. We are on board. It is not easy out there. All right. Thank you so much. Take very good care.
Yes. Good to see you.
Good to see you. All right. That was wonderful. Let's move on to our final fun segment. I'm bringing back into the stream my good friend comedian Sammy Obeid is here. We're going to talk about the new hit on Netflix, Squid Game. Sammy, I want to know from you, what if you had to be in the Squid Game? What game would you actually survive, and what game would you definitely die in? This is surviving the Squid Game.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, okay, so I made Sammy watch this, maybe against his will, but in preparation for this. I'm sure folks have seen it. Some of you haven't. I was told it was like really scary and don't watch it before bedtime. And I watched it not before bedtime, but it is so good. There was a moment of the first episode that I cried, like I almost cried because it was so well done. And apparently it like falls off. I don't really care. I feel like it's just it, in the same way, right? Like it has a style that, I mean, maybe this is a through line through a lot of Korean directors, but like that Parasite had, where it was like this sociological, commentary on, income inequality and like capitalism, but then super funny also.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it caught me off guard a few times. I didn't expect to be laughing. But by the way, I definitely wanted to watch it, so I'm glad that you got me to watch it. But I am terrified of squid in general. Like it's, I have a thing. I like calamari freaks me out. I'm just that's like I'm gonna see some squid in my nightmare.
I mean, it's calamari scary just because like 9 out of every 10 calamari are just pig butt.
True. So I'm scared of pigs. I'm scared of pigs, and I don't know it.
Like I fried calamari. Well, squid are really smart. Not as smart as octopi.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like after seeing my octopus teacher, I was like, I'm only eating squid, but no, this was great. So it's about it seems like it's just about the game, but it's actually about a dad, a divorcee who is down on his luck, completely broke, living with his mom and trying to make ends meet. And his now finds out that his daughter may be taken by his mom to the United States and they might be leaving Korea. And he is terrified of that. And so meets a random stranger who like engages him in a game. And that dude gives him a card, gives him some money when he wins the game and a card. I don't want to spoil it all, but basically says, come to the Squid Game. And it seems like this is a master puppeteer, some billionaire who has designed this awful Hunger Games-esque game where the losing price is your life. So I want to know, but they all play childhood games, which makes it even creepier. Also, it's creepy that everyone's in debt. But I want to know, what game would you play that you'd be like, oh, I got this? And what game would be like, no, I'm dead? Childhood game.
Yeah, no, you asked this earlier, and I was trying to think of like childhood games. I really sucked at like every single childhood game. That's probably why I became a comedian. So I thought, well, more recently, I took some improv classes, and I could tell you which improv games I would survive and die.
If the Squid Game was just improv games, that'd be the most annoying series ever. Like, that wouldn't be like a thriller. It'd be like, make it stop.
We're at the movie theater. We're at the movie theater. No, we're not. It's yes and, and then it's yeah.
You're dead.
The squid groundlings.
How could we're in the improv studio, you ding dong. Worst improviser ever. All right, well, which game do you hate? Because I used to do improv in high school.
I actually hated most of the improv games. I sucked at those too. But there was one that I, for some reason, would win every time. And I don't know how common this one is, but it was, I believe it was called Bippity Bippity Bop, where you put a person in the middle of the circle and they say Bippity Bippity. And if the, if the other person, if they stare at someone straight up in the circle, and if that person doesn't say bop soon enough, then they have to come in the circle.
They have to be the person in the middle.
Yeah. So for some reason I would win every time. People would never see my bops coming. So I was Bippity Bippity Bop champion. And that's, if I had to choose a Squid Game, it would be the Bippity Bippity.
That's good. That's so scary. Bippity Bippity. You pause. Dead.
Yeah, dead.
Okay. And so which one would you suck at? Like, which one would get you killed?
So my least favorite improv game was the one where you go again, it's another circle game, and the person goes in the middle and has to sing a song. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No. Okay, keep going.
You basically, so it starts with somebody in the middle, and it starts with a circle, and then one person volunteers to go in, and they're like, sweet child of mine, and then somebody comes and then tags them and then sings another song, and then the person goes back to the circle. I, for some reason, would just freeze every time that you had, like, I could never think of a song to sing. I think it was
so hard.
Yeah, it's also because of like, I took improv like a long time ago. This was like 8 years ago. And like, for some reason, everybody was white back then. I guess it's changed since then. So like, they were singing these songs that I'd never heard of. And I was like, wow, I need to know more white culture. I'm really behind on this.
You had to keep on singing their song, or you just had to sing a new song?
You had to sing, and you had to continue I think you have to continue their song and then start a new one.
No, it's so hard. Yeah, they were like, Sweet Caroline. And you're like, dum, dum. Like, no.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's so good. I wish they were improv games. Okay, let's see. I would win at, I don't know if this is really a childhood game, but I would win at charades. Or anything that involved acting, like my middle school is defined. My middle school recess time was defined by, I used to make my friends, because I'm very much that person, play like TV advertisement where we just like make up little sketches. I basically would make my friends make up sketches, and I would always it'd be very fun. I had a great time. So anything that's kind of acting or anything that's sort of, that kind of thing, you have to guess, like, I would win. But then in my recess time, all my friends got sick of my stupid, make up an ad game, and they all wanted to play Foursquare. And I fucking sucked at Foursquare. I hate Foursquare. It's dumb. And I was just like, man, I need new friends. I need drama friends. Because I am not really an athletic person. I don't really like I can race. Like, I could just run and probably beat people. That was my only special skill athletically. But I definitely handball, Foursquare, dodgeball, sucked. So I would be done at Foursquare. Little spin on the ball, I'm just out.
Did you guys ever play Butts Up, by the way? That was one of my least favorite games.
Yes. I forgot how it goes, though.
You, at some point, the punishment is you stand up against the wall, and the person can either chuck the ball at your ass, or they hit the ball. It's very I don't know who came up with it. It was
yeah, that and Sharks and Minnows I sucked at, which is Red Rover but in the water. That's already Squid Game. That's basically what you call it, Squid Game.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm excited to finish the series. I don't care if it falls off. You guys, let me know, what games do you remember? What would you be good at? Pick up sticks, jacks, pogs.
Pogs.
God, remember pogs?
Yeah.
I'm too old for pogs. I just watch the other kids and be like, ew. Gross. All right. So that does it for the show. Thank you so much for joining me, Sammy Obeid.
Thank you.
Where can people find your work?
Yeah, so you can follow me on socials listed here at Sammy Obeid. And then my website, sammyko.com, has my blog. So again, the long COVID blog, I do recommend it if you are going through it, because I survived and I'm 100% better now. And then, yeah, you can also catch my show schedule there as well.
Hell yeah. And it's SAMMY.
ko.com.
Yeah. And everyone follow Sammy on all the socials. He's got great bits and he puts a hell of a lot of work into making them funny, especially his stuff on Israel Palestine. So
thank you. Which got me banned from TikTok, by the way. But yeah.
What?
Yeah. I lost 250,000 followers.
Why weren't you bitching about that? Now I want to hear the story. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Next time. Yeah.
Wait. Tell me briefly before I let you go.
Yeah. Well, back in May when, shit was going down, I was using my platforms to post like some new and some old bits on the subject just to, get people engaged who are not engaged. And yeah, as soon as they went up on TikTok, they went viral where, some were getting millions. And was getting a lot of angry comments like, why would you post this now? And I'm like, well, I got to use my platform for something. And then my account got flagged a bunch of times and got shut down permanently.
What?
Yeah.
Bro, this is the real cancel culture. There's actual, when you talk about Israel Palestine, that's when you will get silenced.
Straight up.
And like, no offense, but you're not even like that. You're not a six special Netflix comic.
No, unfortunately not. But I'm going to come up with a new account called The Closer. So
just don't get radicalized by all of this.
Yeah.
Especially not around Palestine. Yeah. Oops. Too late. Sammy, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for being here. Being in the comments, even though this is a pre-recorded show. I love you. Love Francesca out there, whoever you are. You're a wonderful person. You've turned out really great, really wonderful. Thank you to everyone who helps put on this show, to Becca Rufer, to Maximillien Inhoff, to Ellie Hoffman, and Alexandra Ornes. Remember, we stream every Sunday, 5/8 Eastern on YouTube and Twitch. Okay, so be here next week. We got Aaron Ryan as well as Simona Grace. We're talking all about how this country does or does not support parents and what we need to do to change all of that. Thank you for any super chats that we've gotten in advance. Thanks to any Twitch subs we've gotten in advance. I will do the fart song next week. And thanks to everybody who makes the show possible. Becca Rufer, Maximillien Inhoff, to Ellie Hoffman and Alexandra Ornes. But there is more show. You guys, if you're a patron, patreon.com/Bitchuation room to get the rest of this show with me and Mr. Sammy Obeid. We're doing a bonus bish. You don't want to miss it. We're talking about the FBI's raid of the NYPD. So get over there. We'll be there streaming on YouTube exclusively for the patrons only, as well as you can listen back for the patrons only. I do have instructions on patreon.com/Bitchuation room to help you get an exclusive RSS feed, patrons, so you can get your podcasts complete, including the bonus, which is tacked on at the end. So don't sleep on that. And remember, guys, fight the power, fuck the patriarchy, and don't just bitch about it. Meow, meow.